Nice try. Lebanon's fledgling rugby league team hits the ground running. America's failure, how BMW Oracle proved money can't buy success. And the fastest thing on no legs, Sportsworld meets the Blade Runner, Oscar Pistorius. Welcome to Sportsworld, Al Jazeera's regular look at sport around the globe. I'm Rahul Pathak, and in this special edition we're bringing you some of your favourite reports from 2007. Now, in 2008, the Rugby League World Cup will take place in Australia. The hosts are also the favourites, and they'll be hoping to celebrate 100 years of the sport in their country by lifting the trophy. Now, one team who just missed out on the finals is Lebanon, but despite that, their impressive performances during qualification showed that the game definitely has a future in the country. Andy Richardson travelled to an unlikely new frontier for rugby league.
It's not often you hear Arabic spoken in a rugby changing room. These are the minutes before an important league match. Such a scene and such a level of passion would have been unthinkable in this country just a few short years ago. If I were to ask you to consider the heartlands of rugby league, you might think of New South Wales or Queensland in Australia, perhaps Lancashire or Yorkshire in the north of England. You probably aren't thinking of Bahamdoon, a town just outside Beirut. Now, they may still be waiting for the delivery of rugby posts at this particular stadium, but here in Lebanon, the game has taken an unlikely hold. Only 5 years ago, these players were still learning the game, and passing spectators were simply bemused onlookers.
They don't even know the rules, they've never watched the game. They think it's actually American football. When you tell them rugby, they think it's American football. So having it on TV for the first time really awoken the people a bit. So now when I tell some people rugby league, they really know what it's about.
George, if the ball is there, we're going that way, we're defending that way. The ball's there, you're out of play.
The seeds of Lebanese rugby league were sown with a distinctly Australian accent. Professional players of Lebanese descent based in Sydney formed a team to compete at the 2000 World Cup. The side failed to win a game, but did win a lot of friends. They then toured their homeland and began planning for the future.
Our charter from an international rugby league point of view was, if your team wants to now qualify for the next World Cup, you've got to show us that you can start a competition domestically. Otherwise, you'll always be seen as a non-Lebanon team as such. So it was our challenge then to, after that 2000 tour and the visit to Lebanon, to try and work out how we're going to start a domestic competition in Lebanon.
That a Lebanese league is now up and running is thanks to this man. Danny Kazanjan arrived in Beirut in 2002 with a dozen rugby balls and the task of developing a grassroots structure. He introduced the sport to the country's universities and has been rewarded with a thriving league.
We've enabled them to take the sport, start it, run it, manage it on a day-to-day basis, develop it as coaches, develop it as match officials. So they have really been responsible for taking the sport from an idea and making it into something real and tangible.
Today, a quarter of the national squad are born and bred in Lebanon, and once again this team has a World Cup on its mind. After the 2004 event was cancelled, the 2008 finals in Australia are their new focus. This qualifier against Russia had to be relocated to London because of last year's war, but Lebanon still won the match with Australian-born players and their Lebanese counterparts playing side by side.
It's credit to the Lebanese tradition. We don't give up. When we've been there, we get knocked down or we get up and keep going again. To these people, to have what happened past year or so, to get up and do it again and say, no, we want to keep playing, we want to keep the comp going, it's just credit to the Lebanese courage.
I like to think that the level is getting closer because we are improving. How long it will take us to get to their level, I'm not sure, but it's good to see that every time we meet them, we're able to help them more instead of sort of just lagging behind.
That attitude is typified by Ibrahim Balou. He'd never picked up a rugby ball until he started university, but the game has already had quite an impact on him and his body. He's now not only a player, but also a fully qualified coach.
When we went on a tour to England in August 2005, everybody were shocked. There's rugby in Lebanon even. You know, this logo, logo in Arabic. Everybody is wondering, is there rugby in Lebanon? You know, Lebanon, they thought everybody like Lebanon, we are in the desert, in tents, and I don't know.
The immediate future of Lebanese rugby league rests with the national team. But the long-term future will be decided on the playing fields of Lebanon. Andy Richardson, Al Jazeera, Beirut.
Now, one of the biggest sporting events of 2007 was the America's Cup, effectively the World Championship of Yachting. The trophy was retained by Swiss team Alinghi, and once again, a syndicate from the country the Cup was named after failed to make it past the semi-final stage. Now, American team BMW Oracle came into the Challenger Series with high hopes, cutting-edge technology and a huge budget. But as Brendan Connor reports, their failure has added further proof to the adage that big money doesn't always guarantee success.
The sport of yacht racing. It's fast, aesthetically beautiful, technical and strategic, and expensive, and it's all for an old piece of hardware called the America's Cup.
The America's Cup was a very, very small sporting event on the world stage. Now, America's Cup, I rank it as probably the third or fourth biggest sporting event in the world.
This trophy arrived in America in 1851, and it didn't leave until 1983. U.S. teams won the first 25 editions of the America's Cup until it was finally wrestled away by Australia in the 80s. New Zealand has had the honor of holding up the venerable cup, and most recently, the Swiss have celebrated victory. And here in 2007, the Americans wanted it back.
There's a lot of pressure on us from the States to perform well because this is the oldest trophy in sport. It's named after the nation America because the yacht, the original yacht, was named after the nation America. So there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of tradition. It's fun, but there's a lot of pressure as well.
But these days, it's hardly a 2- or 3-horse race anymore. In this sport for multimillionaires and rich syndicates, the challengers come from all over. Italy, Spain, Sweden, South Africa, France, and of course, from America. The BMW Oracle racing team was a well-funded and slick operation that spared no cost here at its Valencia base camp or in building 2 magnificent boats, taking them around the world in search of optimum training conditions and paying out necessary money to attract the top sailors from various countries to crew the boat. Veteran Gavin Brady is from New Zealand, probably the leading sailing nation in the world, and he saw no issue with helping an American team try to win the cup.
You know, this is a very international game now, the technology and everything. We've got an international team. I actually don't think you can win the America's Cup now with just a national team. I think there's too much resources out there in all the nations and all the skills. So you've got to be very open-minded and select people that are going to get along together for 4 years, but also bring a lot of strengths and a lot of information into the team.
The American presence here in Valencia during the trials has been a big one. The BMW Oracle team is among the best funded. They have fabulous facilities. There's been a great training regime that has taken them around the world over the last few years in preparation for the America's Cup Challenge. But the team leaders are quick to point out you don't win the America's Cup by just throwing money around.
It's not only about big budgets, it's the application, it's the use of the resources. It's not necessarily the team with the biggest budget that wins, but the team that is the smartest, that spends their money the wisest.
How much of it is sailing skill? How much of it is equipment? How much of it is organization and funding?
Fast boats, well sailed, that don't break. So you have to have a good strategy, the best people, and all 3 of those things. If you're not excellent in each of those areas, fast boats, well sailed, that don't break, you won't win.
The American team even used the engineering skills at its disposal when BMW came on as a major sponsor for this challenge. Thomas Hahn is an aerodynamic engineer with BMW's German operations, but was asked to lend his skills and expertise to the yacht racing effort. His contribution? Ceramic bearings that reduce friction on the sail rigging, less friction than Teflon, which the other boats currently use.
This component is in the top of the mast, which is here for the spinnaker hoist, because there is a lot of velocity involved. There's a lot of high RPMs when setting the spinnaker, because you have to get the spinnaker up as fast as possible. And these guys are spinning like forever, and they're spinning without any kind of friction. So we are probably able to get the spinnaker up in a second, or not in a second, but in a 1/10 of a second earlier than the others.
Some here in Valencia were envious, even resentful of the amount of money the Americans spent. But it's become a race for the rich. Emirates Airlines sponsor the Kiwis. Prada and other leading Italian companies sponsor Luna Rossa. And the American group made no apologies for having the biggest budget among the challengers. However, in this case, the spending didn't help to win the prize.
Everything we've done for 4.5 years is measured at the end by one trophy.
A trophy the Americans will have to wait another 4 years to try for again. Brendan Connor, Al Jazeera, Valencia, Spain.
Well, as ever, you can keep up to date with all the latest sports news on our website, aljazeera.net/English. But stay with Sportsworld, because coming up, the fastest thing on no legs. Sportsworld meets the Blade Runner Oscar Pistorius.